Welcome back, friends. Today on SoulNet, we're talking about one of my favorite topics, something that people tend to struggle to identify with at times and also to practice in adulthood. The force within us that drives change and transformation. We're talking about creativity. We're born with creativity and it's always in us, yet we're not encouraged to practice it. Right? After the age of 8 or 9, I feel like we stop focusing on creativity and we start focusing on like other things that are going to help us be successful in life.
Productivity.
Productivity.
And intellect, right? Yeah.
Exactly. We start relying on knowledge and not our feelings and not surrendering to, ideas that we have. And so I wanted to talk about that because I feel like in times of pain and struggle and, where we are in the world, where we are, in our age, like so much change, so much pain. And I just feel like creativity is our outlet to express and release and transform. But one of the most, biggest things I hear from friends and people in my world is that they just believe they're not creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wanted to talk about that with you guys today. And if that's a common thread in your circles too, and how we tap into creativity when we are so focused on productivity.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like if we follow our curiosity, it often leads us to creativity. And I say that because in my own journey, and I've been in a very science-driven career for a number of years, even though I've looked at it more holistically, I would find these times of my life where I wanted to do graffiti, I wanted to sketch, I wanted to play. And so I would follow that curiosity and that call, and that would naturally lead me there. So sometimes I've talked about breadcrumb trails, and I think that's a big part of our journeys here. Like what is calling to you in these quiet moments, and can you follow that? And where it could be a desire to say, I want to dance, I want to write, I want to do these things. And so that's heeding the call of that curiosity that takes you towards creativity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think curiosity plays such a big part in it, and that wonder, that childhood wonder.
Yeah.
And that permission, like as a child, you're not looking for permission to play, but as an adult, we're just not giving ourselves permission to play and be curious. And so we kind of like almost like that skill that's innate in us is sort of numbed, is sort of like silenced.
From a young age, and a lot of us too, right?
Yeah. Just to echo on your point, Megan, innate is such a beautiful word to describe creativity, because as a species, innately, we're curious. We come born into this world super curious, and we have that curiosity throughout our entire childhood. Even in adolescence, we still have curiosity. Even young adulthood, we still have curiosity. But the numbing that you speak of, I mean, I remember back in high school with the two of you, how creative we all were, but it just was expressed differently. Like Dana was really creative with her athleticism from my perspective, right? Like Dana had more things that she was creative in, but from what I experienced on the outside. And Megan, you're like, from what I experienced, your social intelligence was very creative. Your ability to be with all different kinds of people and just so empathic with all different kinds of people, Again, what I experienced from the outside. And my creativity I remember it was either you, Megan, or one of your friends. I was like bouncing down the hall in my little creative outfits that I used to wear, and I had suspenders on.
I think I remember that.
On top of a sweater with jeans, like really tight jeans and my jack boots,
Oh my God, you were so badass.
I love it.
And so we all, creativity is innate, like you say. I love that you brought up this subject, because what happens is survival and productivity interferes with our creativity. And the belief that, we have to do certain things to survive. It's true. The world is half supportive, half challenging. That is true. But creativity can be like a gateway that is kind of a trailhead that's always available. Even if it's not available 100% or 80%, it can be like just an open window. And then we can, like you in your work, Megan, follow the path, right? And it's just such an important part, especially as we're saying, going through midlife with changing hormones, changing family dynamics, our children growing and evolving. Like, we're using creativity all the time to adapt to our living situations and our changing families. So in a way, creativity and survival have a intimate relationship, but we can lose the trailhead, the access way to creativity when we're in that, like, it almost feels like a teeter-totter. When the teeter-totter goes too much into survival, we lose the access.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the Maslow's
hierarchy of needs.
hierarchy. And a lot of that is like, if we talk about those, how we expand as our basic needs are taken care of, we actually, when we're not in survival, we open to creativity. But when we are in survival, it's very hard on a physiological level to access it. I don't know. I mean, I've had times that I've been in survival, obviously, in my life, but not maybe to the depths of what some people might experience in the, deep poverty and stuff like that. I've had financial challenges, but not deep poverty. So I can't say too much, but I would also say that there are aspects of that limiting belief, I think, that you mentioned earlier, Meg. Like, I remember years ago with a counselor that I saw, and I was talking about, accessing creativity, and I said, well, I don't really feel creative in my life. I didn't have anything. And that's when I started kind of doing some of the graffiti and those pieces. But she offered some really great tips for me that have stayed with me. And so in someone who works in a science-based field, in my work, I find creativity in program design. I do a lot of work with, clients that are trying to fit in movement or these things in their busy lifestyles. So I can bring in creativity into my work through how I design a program for somebody that fits into their day. So I loved that lens. The other one that I really liked was this presentation of, what about, fashion, something that most often people don't even think about, but that, like Eilena said, that's a creative expression. How you put yourself out into the world is absolutely creativity. How you decorate your home is absolutely expression of creativity. So I think some of the limiting beliefs that we have are actually really just, we don't think about creativity in these kind of ways. So we can invite in more creativity by opening to other aspects versus just writing and drawing and painting and these kind of more traditional art-based things.
For me, in my world, when I think about people that dive into creativity as an adult, it's often because they're at the brink of something. It's like Suleika Jaouad. She's the author of Between Two Kingdoms. And she talks about creativity as an act of survival. And she was between life and death and on her cancer journey. When people are pushed to the brink, it's only at that time when they surrender.
Yes. Yeah. Surrender to, yes. Yeah.
Right? Surrender to their soul. Yeah. Surrender to the voice inside that says, I want to wear those fucking suspenders now in 2024. I want to put my combat boots back on and pull out my suspenders. Like, I just feel like maybe if we can just tune in to that voice before we're at the brink.
Yeah. I've noticed in a couple clients, like women in midlife, two things that have been very like empowering for a few women of different body sizes. Okay. So it's not about like having the fit body or whatnot. Doing a self-portrait, like a photography that is, I forget what it's called, but it's like the burlesque style photography.
Oh, like the boudoir kind of shoot.
Photography. Yeah. Hugely empowering, totally taking us out of our comfort zone and allowing us to experience creativity with our own body and like just being with the history of our body. And then the second one is
How great is that from an aspect of the sacral chakra as well? Because you're naturally opening up to your sexuality and that side of yourself, which ties into
creativity and that innate feminine quality to reproduce and create from nothing.
Oh, so you go in with an open mind.
Exactly.
And you just surrender. Oh my gosh, that is an act of surrender to go into a boudoir shoot at 50 years old.
And then that second piece I was going to add on to that is like what I notice very empowering for women is discovering dance, any form of dance, sensual dance, all the way up to pole dancing, like just taking on that like sensual, curvaceous, flowy, watery movement. Is so conducive to creativity. Like, it's like tapping into something inside of us that we're like, I have that. Like, wow, it is really connects to creativity.
My whole kind of my body is like yearning and longing for that fluid movement, that sensual like openness. But yet I'm like, I'm not a dancer.
Doesn't matter.
Like
that's a limiting belief.
Isn't that so interesting? That's my limiting belief.
Exactly.
So maybe my invitation from this episode is to sign up for a flamenco dancing or belly dancing or something.
Yeah. Love it.
And so I'm just going to honor the longing.
Yes. Honor the longing. That's the precursor to creativity.
And curiosity.
Exactly.
Curious about what came up. Oh, a longing. Follow the curiosity. You get to creativity.
Love it.
Yes. Wow. Those are great examples. Great examples.
If we're looking at like practical areas that we could actually explore, we've talked about the sacral chakra and the importance of that being open, right? So how can you, if you feel like maybe there is issues with your sexuality or sexual desires, that's often a good indicator. Reproductive health can be a good indicator as we are going through these changes through menopause. That's direct correlation to our reproductive health. So how can you invite in simple things? So like I'm using an orange mug today in honor of our conversation. Nice. Again, that orange is a really great color. So wear it, surround yourself with it. If people do have other, meditation practices, even a sacral chakra meditation, Vam is the sound and the resonance of the sacral chakra. So could you listen to something like that and take that in through your senses? We talk a lot here about the sensory aspects. So can you bring that into your world in really subtle ways and see how that starts to open up some of your creativity? I'd even go as far as to say, maybe, this is a strange time for us in midlife. So if you can't go into art, but maybe you are called to your sexuality, maybe that means, pleasuring yourself more, a bit more intimacy with your partner in a more sexual and sensual way, not necessarily sex, but like activate that piece in yourself and see what might come from that. So those are kind of more practical ways that we could invite in creativity.
Ooh, the boudoir shoot.
The boudoir. I'll add on to Dana too. Some practical ways is creativity access is often, not always, but often nonverbal. It's like somatic in the body, at least the trailhead to it. And then if you're a writer, for example, that trailhead will lead you to expressing some beautiful writing. But in that body piece, what I notice helps for me, because I'm very Vata in my head, is really basic primal things like drum beats. So drum beats really get me like into connecting to like movement of my chakras. And like I can actually sense where things are at when I release and surrender to drum beat music.
I find often in my meditation practice that placing your hand over your heart, you can find that drum beat.
Totally.
And you can connect. So music, and also you have that drum beat, that music inside you.
Totally. Yeah. I often use it.
I use that too.
And then dancing to music, and not for dancing, but just for primal movement, like finding a rocking motion first, and that rocking motion, and then finding fluidity in my own body with like, how is the energy in my body? Where can I find water in my body? Water is like being very air in Vata. Water helps ground me, water and earth. And so movement, sound, and touch. I notice when I can like do like self-havening, which is a practice that helps ground within yourself, or receive massage, or like when my partner is cuddling me at night and I just feel that pressure and physical sensation, I can surrender, and that surrender allows me to reflect. So just little things, getting to know your own body, what it responds to, finding those trailheads that have us so that the doorways, the gateways can open. Because it's almost like once we surrender, creativity is a force of its own. It has its way with us, which is so cool. Like we can have a relationship with that.
Yeah. Actually, creativity often needs stillness too. When we're really, really busy, creativity rarely comes through. So it does need a little bit of like
the cocooning.
Quiet.
Cocooning. You're right.
It does.
Yeah.
That's right. The caterpillar that surrenders to the cocooning.
Yeah.
That metamorphosis is like chaos. You just surrender to the process, and then the transformation comes. And then something beautiful comes from the chaos.
Yeah.
Right. And so I do think you have to have that somatic embodied experience to transform and also to transmit whatever's coming from you and however it comes out of you.
Right.
That idea, right? Whether it's through movement and dance or written or expression, through whatever it is. So
music.
I love that. Music, however it kind of comes out of you. But if you can think about that surrendering that the caterpillar kind of does, and then the transformation that occurs when you surrender to the process.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then the beauty that is born from that chaos. If we can look at chaos as an important part of the process.
Fuel.
Yeah, fuel, the fire.
Fire. It makes me think of Dante's Inferno.
Yes.
Like that's right.
Oh my gosh. Go back to Dante's Inferno. That is like really such a great example of creativity, surrendering, the fire, the chaos, rising from the ashes, the whole thing, Dante's Inferno. Also, if I may just share with you a quote. So Rick Rubin, music producer, very famous music producer, has written this book, The Creative Act. So speaking of music, this whole thing that we've just kind of come full circle on is actually, he writes about it, this process in The Creative Act, a way of being. And I was going to share with you a quote to end our episode from Rick Rubin.
Just side note, I love his hair. Like,
oh my God, he is like he is like a creative, sentient being who's been born out of chaos, and he looks like it. He's got wild hair, wild beard. He surfs, he meditates like on the ground, like wherever he is. And he's a music producer for some of the biggest rap and hip hop and like rock and rollers. He's like it's just like amazing. I love him so much. Rick Rubin, we're going to dedicate this episode to you. So he says in his book, the reason we're alive is to express ourselves in the world. And creating art may be the most effective and beautiful method of doing so. Art goes beyond language, beyond lives. It's a universal way to send messages between each other and through time.
Beautiful.
So with that, soul friends, may we surrender to the creative act and the way of being. Until next time.
As we wrap up today's episode, please remember to hit subscribe and share with your fellow midlifers, and find us on the different socials. Let's keep this conversation going, listeners. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, embrace the journey and know that you're not just surviving, you can thrive in the trenches of midlife.